and welcome to Innoverge's STEM and X.
Welcome to Innoverge's STEM and X webinar. Today we have a very special guest. Her name is Julia Landauer, and I will be your host today. My name is Ilana, and I am the Executive Director here at Innoverge. And before we get into things, I just want to shout out to Innoverge and the work that we've been doing. So I will share my screen. So yeah, a little bit about Innoverge. Our mission is to be a global youth network working to diversify the next generation of change makers through interdisciplinary STEMX education. And our goal centers around educational equity and inclusivity, having held 250 plus free events, workshops, and programs worldwide for minority youth. And some of our pillars, a big part of it is these monthly Fireside Chats like we're doing right now, and newsletters and resources. And then another big pillar is our community education. So we like to host a lot of in-person programming for underrepresented youths and send out hands-on kits as well. And our last pillar is our mentorship incubator. And that is a student-driven mentorship program for high schoolers and middle schoolers. And some of our impact to date, we have impacted over 7,700 students across 60 locations in 14 countries. And we're currently supported by Disney, the Hershey Company, We, and Youth Service America. And we are a 501c3 fiscally sponsored organization. And if you're watching this and you would like to get involved, there are multiple ways to get involved. You can become a regional director in your local community and lead that hands-on STEM education with all of the resources provided by Innoverge. You can subscribe to our newsletter, stay tuned with programs and competitions and opportunities, or you can sign up to become a mentor and mentor a middle school student in STEM. And all of this information is on our website, innoverge.org, for you to sign up. And yeah, so today we have Julia, and Julia is a motivational speaker. She is a race car driver. She's an advocate for STEM education, women's empowerment, leadership. She graduated from Stanford with a science, technology, and society degree. She's on Forbes 30 under 30 in the sports section. She the first female to step on a EuroNASCAR podium and the first NASCAR track woman champion. And this is all very exciting. So Julia, would you like to introduce yourself and tell a little bit of your story of how you got into STEM and sort of your journey?
Definitely, and thank you for having me. It's great to be here. And you got a lot of the big ticket items on who I am and what I've done. But I think from my story perspective, I was very lucky that my parents got me and my sister and brother into racing go-karts when I was 10. And I realized looking back that one of the things I really loved about it was that it was this human-machine interaction, right? Like I was this scrawny little 10-year-old kid who was able to manipulate and maneuver a machine to make it go faster, to try things and maybe it didn't work. And I needed to have this, basic but still good understanding of the technical components and to understand the physics of, if you go too fast into a corner and then try to turn, physics won't let you do that. So you have to slow down a certain amount. The radius of a corner is going to be a determining factor as to how fast you can go. Racing in the rain and all that stuff, and then understanding how various changes to the vehicle can impact and affect how it handles on track. So that human machine interaction was super cool. I always felt very lucky that, I was encouraged to learn a lot about it. I was encouraged to be the very best. Growing up, I didn't see a lot of other girls and women that were encouraged to be winners because it's not polite or whatever. But I was, and I think that's really great. And then I knew I wanted to pursue something technical in school, but also continue to learn a whole lot. And so Stanford has a program called Science, Technology, and Society, which I took a more technical approach to it, but it still allowed me to take a lot of different classes in, mechanical engineering design, a little bit of computer science, which was really challenging, but really good for learning how to problem solve and sticking with a problem. But then I also did things like communications classes. And I knew that in racing, I was going to have to be a public figure. So how could I learn as much as I can about how that works and the psychology of that? And yeah, so I have always just, mainly because I am a woman in a male dominated field, I've always been an advocate for women, for girls. And I think STEM industries as a whole are very important. But then I also think because they're so lacking in some diversity, there's so much that's being left out because more women and more minorities are not as involved. So I think, innovation gets better when we have more diverse people working on it. You come up with new ideas, you probably avoid some problems. And so it's an important human community issue that I think we continue to have to work on. And but I love to see future generations like you guys who are kind of giving resources and helping women and minorities out along the way.
Yeah, amazing. Well, we can jump right into questions. That actually leads to one of the questions I had. So how did you decide on a degree in science, technology, and society? How did you find out about the program, and what kind of drew you to it?
Great question. So like most college students, I could not decide what I wanted to really focus on. So at Stanford, you have to make a decision by the end of your sophomore year. And I kind of knew, because I was still racing actively and because I was building up my brand and because I went into college thinking that I wanted to learn a little bit about a lot of subjects. I wanted to push, learn what I didn't know about, learn what I didn't even know I liked. And so I knew I didn't want a major that was really going to take over all of my academics. I didn't want something that was lab heavy. I didn't want something that was going to be the majority of my classes that left little room for extracurriculars or, just for fun classes. And so I just kind of waited and waited and waited. And then kind of winter, spring of my sophomore year, Stanford changed the requirements for STS because it was a very lab heavy major. And then they changed it so that it could be a little less lab heavy. And I was like, okay, perfect. This is for me. This is exactly what I want to do. And yeah, so I got kind of lucky with that. And because for me, I think I had a bit of a luxury in that I knew that I was going to graduate, move to North Carolina and pursue racing. So it wasn't like I had to do a major for a specific job or type of career that I was going after. I thought about, what skills do I still need in life? What kinds of people do I want to meet? I think that's something that's so important in college. It's one of the only times when you have so many experts in so many different fields that, I think all students should reach out to faculty that are teaching things that are interesting to them, even if they don't ever take a class, like, if it's something that's fun for extracurriculars. So anyway, I think that's really important and was something that I could do. And I think now we're entering a time in humanity when I think people are creating a lot of their own jobs, whether it's like in a traditional startup entrepreneurial way, or if it's freelancing with skills that you have. I mean, I just think about what you want to get better at, what you want to learn. And if there is a career path that you like, medicine or engineering or software, if there's a place you want to go, then obviously get those skills. But remember that college is one of the last times where you have so much diversity in terms of subject matter and experts in one place at your fingertips. And everyone loves a curious student. So.
Yeah, that sounds like it really was the kind of major for you. Yeah. So it sounds like you raced in college. How did you kind of balance, I'm guessing you had to travel and practice a lot. So how did you balance racing and schoolwork and things like that?
Yeah, so throughout college, I primarily only raced in the summers. So that definitely made it easier. I always did brand development or I started my sponsorship hunts when I was in college, and it was I look back and it's very cringy because I think I went about it the wrong ways, but you have to learn somehow. But then my junior year, I did race, and I raced primarily in the Bay Area or a little bit south of the Bay Area, and then up in Sacramento. And so I definitely took a lighter course load. And then I, would have to drive probably 2 hours away on a Friday, most likely, or a Thursday evening, hopefully not have class on Friday, and then race on the weekend and then come back. So luckily, with college, you're in control of your time. So I was able to, I didn't do a lot of extracurriculars that quarter. I just kind of did my racing, did my schoolwork, and then traveled for racing. But it was a lot of time spent in a car. And but I'm, throughout, I started racing when I was 10. So throughout high school, also, like, I missed so much high school for racing. So it was something where I got very disciplined about getting my work done quickly and efficiently. And again, I wasn't in like really time consuming lab heavy group work classes. And that helped me, go racing. But it's all about being disciplined with your time. And I think, if you're forced to learn that when you're younger, it definitely helps you as you get older.
Yeah. So you said that you started racing when you were 10. I guess looking back on your kind of whole path and journey, how has it kind of like stayed the same or changed from what you thought you were going to do when you were younger?
Well, it's funny because when people ask, like, if you didn't go racing, what would you do? And the thing is, from such an early age, that was the goal. Like, by the time I was 12, I had told my parents that, I love working this hard. I love the racing. I love going fast. I love winning. I love working with adults. I liked the responsibility. So I knew I wanted to pursue it. And so, there are so many different ways, different series that you can race in, different disciplines within racing you can go to. And I started in something that was more like, Formula One style, open wheels, on road courses where you go left and right. And then I switched over to more of a NASCAR style, which is primarily on ovals, and it looks like that fendered race car. So the wheels are covered. It looks more like the car that you drive on the street. And all forms of racing are really challenging, and but I liked them all. And so I just, obviously there are some things that we could go back and do differently, but I think the biggest thing is when you're in a moment, you're making decisions, it's all about taking all the information you have and making the best decision based off of that. And so I'd love to be racing a little bit more, but I did so much throughout my 20s that was really cool. And, I got my first championship when I was 14, and then I got my second one when I was 23. So it was really cool to kind of hold that championship trophy again. And it's been really cool.
Yeah. Well, I guess you had a vision when you were younger, and you really were able to follow it through. That's really awesome.
Yeah. And I think I will say that I do think that a little bit of luck went into that. My parents chose to get us involved in go-karting, and I happen to love it, and I happen to be really good at it. So I don't want people to feel discouraged if, you're 12, 18, 25, and you don't feel like you've found that passion, because I think, one, passions change throughout your life. And I think what really makes something satisfying is if you're able to, dedicate yourself to it, put a lot of hard work in, feel like you're growing, feel like you're challenging yourself, and then feel like you're succeeding in some capacity, however you define that. So keep searching, if you don't feel like you've gotten that like passion thing that you're working on, like, just keep dabbling, keep trying new things. There's so much cool stuff in the world that, unexpected avenues can be really fulfilling.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice, especially for a lot of our viewers who are sort of in that age range where we're figuring things out.
It's a journey for everyone. It is, there's some things that will be really exciting to you, some things that won't be exciting, and you just have to deal with them. But I like to think that as long as you're taking steps and you're trying new things and you're asking questions, then it'll sort itself out if you're putting the work in.
Yes, for sure. What sort of opportunities can students look for to gain more experience in racing? If they, have tried it and they really like it, what would you recommend?
Well, go-karting is always the most fun, and there's indoor go-karting and then there's outdoor go-karting, and so that's really cool. But the other area within racing, there's so many engineering positions. There are so many STEM jobs in racing. So the driver gets a lot of the glory, but you kind of need some family ties, or it's really expensive to go racing, but there are so many roles within the racing industry that aren't driving. So whether that's mechanics who are making the physical changes on the cars, or the engineers who are studying specific components like the aerodynamics involved in it, or the tire compounds. There are people on the team side, and they make the decisions as to what you change on the car. And then there's people on the supplier side. So like the tire companies that supply the tires for the car, they have whole teams of engineers to develop the tires, right? And then there's non-technical stuff like everything in PR and marketing, the organizational side of the sanctioning body, whether that's NASCAR, Formula One, IndyCar. And so I think if the engineering route is, or engineering or more technical route is what you're interested in, there are a lot of teams that need people to work. There are a lot of organizations. I'm a partner of the Tech Force Foundation, which is a nonprofit that helps give scholarships and resources and education to people looking for technical vocations. So again, the Tech Force Foundation, I'm a big supporter of. I think they do great work. And it's all about reaching out. I think no matter what industry you want to get into, it's about putting yourself out there, cold emailing, cold calling, going to events, networking. It's exhausting. It takes time, but the more you're putting yourself out there, one, the more that people learn about you and they see your ambition and your drive. But then also, the more you learn about different paths that you can take, the more people you talk with. So I'm a big believer in heavy networking, especially when you're young and with energy and, have the whole world ahead of you.
Yes, it sounds like you did a lot of that kind of networking.
Well, also like one specific example that I give is that I have always been interested in how the automotive industry can be more environmentally friendly. Like it's not lost on me that, having all these transporters that bring the cars to the track and all the private planes for all the top level drivers who are flying to these tracks, like it's not good for the environment. So I was always interested in, how that could change. And I didn't want to study, green energy. I didn't really want to go into that from a class perspective, but I reached out to the director of the sustainability department at school. And I just said, hey, this is who I am. I'm really interested in learning about XYZ. And she sat down with me for an hour and she opened my mind. She was like, okay, well, for the racetracks, if they use do they ship in frozen foods, or do they, have local produce for what they sell in the grandstands? Like, is there a way to do something with carpooling instead of individual parking for everyone? Is there a way to get some mass transit to racetracks? Like all these little things, like could the broadcast booths be run on something different? So all these ideas that I hadn't thought about, and I was just like, wow, this is so cool. Like, thank you. And that's, again, like, I can't emphasize it enough, that networking, that reaching out, like if you're specific in your request or what you want to talk about, most people in, especially in an education institution will find time.
Yeah, that's really cool that she just sat down with you and
office hours.
You just reached out and things happened. Yeah, that's really awesome. I guess you've given a lot of amazing advice already, but is there kind of any other advice you would give to students who hope to pursue kind of studies in like the STEMX fields?
I have a couple of pieces of advice that I think are super important. One is to always explicitly ask for what you want. So for example, if you're interested in an internship, or if you want to shadow someone, or if you want, don't assume that people will offer you anything. I think, and especially women, we, through studies, we know that we tend to wait to be invited to things. And I think we can't do that. If you want to go somewhere, if you want to go to an event, just ask for an invite, ask if you can go, and really kind of put yourself in that situation. I think that's really important. I think, not allowing yourself, like if things aren't going well, like let yourself get frustrated a little bit. I think it's important to have kind of those negative emotions, if you will, to then give you the oomph and the push to go try to make it better. I think acknowledging how you're feeling. Another thing, once you're in the industry, is I'm a big believer in the power of male allies. And one example from racing, I knew that the guys would race me harder. They always did. They don't like to get beat by the girl. And, I was having a bit of a rough start to my season. And then my driver coach recognize that. And he's told the whole team, like, guys, they raced her so much harder. I've never seen people be so aggressive, like blah, blah, blah. And because it was coming from him, because he, stepped up and said to the rest of the guys on the team, like, she is being treated differently, they thought, okay, like they respected him. They worked with him for a while. Like, they're like, okay, let me look closer. Oh yeah, that is the case. Whereas I think if I had said they're racing me harder, they'd think I was whining or something. So I think it's really important to strike that balance of, trying to find the people who you think are empathetic, the guys who are empathetic, and try to be, give a glimpse as to what you're going through, express how you're feeling, or if the culture of who you're with is, hurting your feelings or making you feel a bad certain kind of way, like start to bring that up with some of the guys you trust, and you'll see if they're receptive to it. And if they are, jump on that and try to ask if they can stand up for you, if they can point it out. Because then I really believe that when every team member is empowered and feeling like they can bring their best selves, then the team, the work, the company, everyone does better, right? But the tide rises. No, the ship rises with the tide. There we go. And so for any guys who are watching, I would also say, like, keep an eye out if you see injustices or if you see women or minorities being treated unfairly. Like, it can be scary, but stepping up will make a big difference, because you're then showing that you care about these people as people. And I think that's really important. And the only other bit of advice that I've been thinking about recently that I think I'm going to incorporate into some new keynotes is, being intentional about who you spend, your time with, your friends, your partners, who you interact with on social media, because I really think that over time, we kind of start to mirror the people we surround ourselves with more. And so you want to be with people who are going to help you be better, help you be bigger, or help you feel secure and cozy and comfy and safe, but I think especially on social media, it's so easy to kind of take what other people are doing and then judge yourself off of that. And it can really hurt your mental health, and it can really hurt your confidence. And so being intentional about who you are exposing yourself to, who you're letting in, I think that carries a lot of value as you get older and as these relationships get deeper and deeper.
Yeah. That's a lot of really good advice. I think I can definitely apply a lot of that. Me being interested in STEM, I often find myself in very male-dominated environments, and there's a lot of nuances to it. Like, it's not always, just cut and dry. Oh, they're saying offensive comments and I have to stand up for myself. Like, there's often a lot of dynamics, and
it's hard to navigate. Oh, sorry, keep going.
Yeah. Oh, I was just going to say, and just, this little plug for Julia's TEDx talks. I watched them, and one of them was about breaking down some of these stereotypes. So I was just reminded of that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's fun. And a lot of that stuff I learned while I was at school. I didn't talk about this, but I feel like I have been a confident woman for most of my life, and like I've been supported, but I felt like imposter syndrome. I felt that, and, feeling not super confident, feeling like I need to be invited, feeling like a little scared to do scary things. And then I took a women's history class, and I learned about all these studies that quantified the feelings I had. Like, this had been studied, like these things that I felt making me insecure or not worthy, like so many people and women have felt that. And when I came across some of this research, it was really liberating, because it told me I wasn't alone. It told me that, our culture primes us to not be leaders, to not go after things, and so if that that's the case, you can say, all right, it's normal if I feel this way. And now it's just my responsibility to try to work past that, to try to counter how society has portrayed us, how society has treated us, how we're primed. We have to take the steps, but don't think that you're the only one going through it. And that was really powerful for me.
Yeah. I think some of the potency of that is, it makes you feel like, oh, there's a problem with me. Like, I am too weak, or I have a problem. But when you really look at it, it's like, no, it's not my problem. It's like a society level problem that we really need to be working towards rectifying. Yeah.
Totally. And whether that's like women focused, minority focused, or men focused with toxic masculinity, I mean, like it's pervasive. And, I think kind of, for me, I'm a very pragmatic person. So for having that very like logical explanation as to why I might be feeling some way just made me feel so much better. I was like, okay, girl, you're going to work through this. You're going to figure it out. You're going to talk with your friends. You're going to hear about other people's experiences and how they deal with it. And that communication and building that community is really, really strong.
Yeah, like it's not just me. There's other people out there, and very successful people who have kind of worked through it. Well, I guess a question along those lines, I'm sure you have, but I guess, have you kind of faced any adversity, kind of career-wise or personally wise, and how have you kind of worked to overcome them or are overcoming them?
Yeah. So from a very, just pure racing point, as I mentioned, like people still didn't want to get beat by the girl. And sometimes coaches would tell the male drivers, like, don't let that B word, pass you, like really aggressive stuff for no reason. So there was that. And I held it by fighting back. If someone was racing me really aggressively, I'm going to race them aggressively back because, that's not cool. And if you're going to treat someone like that, that's how you're going to get treated. I think another thing is that, racing is such a business and it's so expensive and you need to have partners. And I think it still is a good old boys club. And so I think being taken seriously, I think for women, we have such a hard balance of, some either wanting to be in tune with our feminine side, or when that we are in tune with that, it's considered weak or not serious or something. But then if we are too masculine or bringing out those traits, it's like, well, she's unappealing and all this stuff. And so I think that balance is always one that, we're going to struggle with forever, I think, but finding what's natural to you. And I think at the end of the day, how you hold yourself, how you present yourself, what you're comfortable and not comfortable doing, like you have to follow your gut. And so I think that's something that's just an ongoing balance and struggle, and, you have to explore it. And then I think a big thing that has helped me, whether it was kind of more sexism based or just other stuff, is something I mentioned earlier about just really letting myself feel what I need to feel when I need to feel it. And so on the one hand, if I'm really proud of myself because I just kicked butt on track or in a meeting or whatever, like celebrate that. Little victories are so important because they give us a little rush of dopamine, and then that kind of gives us momentum. And if we can just acknowledge the victories, we're that much more likely to persevere and to want to go further and to push ourselves. On the flip side, if you are really angry, I think you need to feel that. You need to let that emotion, because that will then drive you to make some change. And if you need to grieve, which I know a lot of us have been doing in a lot of different ways, especially over the pandemic, I think it's really important to let yourself grieve and let yourself just like feel the sadness that you need to feel, and then work with it and understand it. And then I think that allows you to move forward. And so I think, there's a lot of discussions around mental health, and I think learning how to let in your emotions and really feel them, sit with them, it then just helps you move on quicker. And I don't mean that in a dismissive way. I just mean, there are certain chemical balances that allow us to operate at the maximum capacity or the best that we can. And extreme emotions in either direction kind of hurt that. So I think we need to feel them, but then we just need to work with them and acknowledge them and not bottle things up. And I say that as someone who, I know that I live on an emotional roller coaster, and I love getting super invested in things and hoping that they're going to work out. And then I deal with the disappointment when they don't work out. And, I think for me, that makes me feel alive. I know that's not for everyone, but it helps to do that. And then the last thing, I know I'm rambling a little bit, but the last thing I think is to be clear in the communication. When dealing with adversity, being as clear as you can in discussing what you're feeling, why you're feeling it, how it can be better. And whether that's, in a professional relationship, in a personal relationship. One of the biggest things I've had to learn growing up is that everyone has a different way they were raised. Everyone has a different lived experience. My experience going through the world is going to be different than your experience for a number of different reasons. And so I cannot expect that you'll understand how my brain works. I cannot expect you to know what I need. I can't expect you to know what I'm thinking or how I expect, people to behave. And so when we make assumptions that people are going to behave the same way we do, I think that's when we run into issues. And so I think so important in personally, professionally, is to be clear about what you want, what you need, what your communication style is, to be forward in offering the information, because the more that you can give others to then work off of, the smoother that relationship's going to be. And so I think it's really hard, but the more clear and explicit we are with people, especially that we care about or that we're working with, I think the smoother things go, and the more you can feel comfortable giving feedback, getting feedback, adjusting when things aren't working, because no one assuming makes an ass of you and me, right? And so we don't make any assumptions in how people are going to communicate and work with you, would be my last little bit of advice.
Yeah. Well, I think going back to what you were saying earlier, I think sometimes we think of, courage or bravery or something as just bottling all the emotions away and just like, no emotion, I'm just going to do it. But it's actually more brave to kind of embrace the emotion, and then what can I do from this and with this? Yeah.
And it requires self-awareness, right? The more that you let yourself be vulnerable or let yourself feel things, the more you're going to learn about yourself in terms of what's important to you, what affects you, how you react to different situations. And self-awareness is so important, and it's so challenging because it's asking us to be objective about a very subjective topic ourselves, right? But that's the only way we're going to improve or be at peace with ourselves. Being comfortable in your skin comes down to a certain amount of self-awareness and understanding how you operate, and working on what you want to work on, but also accepting what's also there. And I think that just brings an inner peace that will help you get through anything.
Yeah. Very, very nice advice. I guess that leads into kind of my last kind of more serious question. I know that in your career, you've also been doing a lot of motivational speaking, your TEDx talks. So how did you kind of begin doing that? What kind of opportunities led you to that? And I guess, how did you overcome any speaking jitters as well?
Great question. So throughout a little bit high school, but then also in the beginning of college, I would regularly volunteer to speak at girls, like summer camps, science camps, whatever it was, just to help, give my experience a lot like today, right? Just volunteer to speak and to see if I can help. If I can help one person every time feel like they learn something, that's worthwhile. So I was comfortable doing that. But then when I was a senior at Stanford, they asked me if I would contribute with the TEDx talk. So that was my first, I was thrilled. I was so excited. I knew that I had good stories to tell. We got to work with a speaking coach, and she really helped me kind of create that narrative arc. And I did I went on stage. I was so nervous. Like, I get really nervous before every race, but this TEDx talk made me super nervous as well. And like, my heart was racing. I was jittery, like I was shaking. And I got on stage and I started telling my stories. I was speaking way too quickly. I got very winded, but I made my first, wasn't really a joke, but my first story that really made people laugh a lot. I think you know which one I'm talking about. And when they started laughing, I just got filled with this energy. It was like, oh my gosh, I just made a whole room of people laugh. And that was so cool. And then afterwards, when I was leaving at like our day break, I was behind two women who didn't know that I was behind them. And I heard one said that she really agreed with what I was saying and all that. And the other one was like, well, no, I don't think that, X, Y, or Z. And I loved that, my perspective was causing this dialogue, and it was leading people to really talk about these issues. And I thought that was really cool. And so I knew that keynote speaking was a career, and I knew that I was also pursuing racing. So I didn't want a job that was going to have to, take me away from racing. So after I graduated, I just started pitching myself to speaking conferences. I Googled women's leadership conferences, and because I had this TEDx video that was so clear and clean, like I could just send it to them and say, hey, this is how I speak. This is how you'll see me on stage. And luckily I got someone, a client who had a women's leadership conference. They hired me to do the closing keynote. I didn't know what to ask for a fee. So I asked them, like, was it too low? Was it too high? And they told me it was way too low and that I should ask for more. I was like, oh my goodness, thank you for being transparent. They didn't pay me more, but they told me next time I should ask. And they ended up connecting me with my first speaking agent. So luckily a lot of things kind of fell in, but it came down to, again, to me pitching myself. And I sent dozens and dozens of cold emails, and I just got that one back that said that they wanted to hire me. So cold calling, people have mixed feelings about it. I think it's worth it if you have the time, because you just never know. But then I've been able to build it, and as I discover new things about myself, I share that with my audiences, and it's cool, it's exciting, it's fun, it's nerve-wracking, it's inconsistent, and it's an interesting way to freelance, but I feel, it's so satisfying to have the Q&As afterwards and have people ask just like really vulnerable questions that then the whole audience feeds off of. And so it's really cool to help people kind of learn more about themselves or think about things in a different way, that hopefully helps them be their best self.
Yeah. Well, yes, it's very, very rewarding that, it's not just like giving a talk and it's like going in one ear and out the other ear, but hearing that dialogue, that you really kind of stirred something within the audience. That's so cool.
Yeah, I'm very lucky to be able to do this as my career.
Well, and I imagine it's pretty flexible as well, which I think is very nice.
Yeah. And you get to meet a lot. I love meeting a lot of different people. And to your point about getting over speaking jitters, like I always get a little nervous on stage because I'm invested, right? Part of being nervous, you want it to go well because I've practiced, it's people's valuable time. I don't want to waste it, right? And so I utilize some like deep breathing techniques. I think breathing is so powerful, and there's so many different techniques, and every person will have different things that work for them, but I do really slow, deep breathing into my diaphragm, and that helps calm me down. But I have a lot of fun with speaking. I love, it's kind of like a conversation with the audience. Mine's verbal, but theirs is their body language or how intense they're, looking at me or whatever. And so I like that. And so I think with speaking, it's like people either love it or they find it really scary. And there are definitely tips and things you can do to make it less scary, but I've always been one of the people who really enjoys it.
Yes. All right. Well, I guess for like the last 5-10 minutes, I have a couple of just fun rapid fire questions.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess first one, these are all kind of Valentine's Day themed since that's coming up, but
cool.
Skittles or M&Ms?
M&Ms.
I agree. Chocolate is so good. Okay. For Valentine's gifts, would you prefer flowers or like food?
Oh, that's a hard one. I would say flowers, but food is also really good.
Favorite romance movie?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so obviously Notebook, Walk to Remember, formative part of my youth. Oh, now you're putting me on the spot. I love all romance. I also love the Modern Love series from the New York Times article.
Oh my gosh, they're so cute.
Oh my gosh, right? Like I love love.
Yeah.
Who doesn't love love, right?
Of course. Celebrity crush besides yourself. No, just kidding.
Okay, so first one was probably Hunter Parrish. So he was in a TV show called Weeds, but I also saw him on Broadway in Spring Awakening. He was really my first big celebrity crush, and then Ryan Gosling.
Oh, of course.
Obviously, we're keeping it in the same buckets of movies here.
Yes, who does not love Ryan Gosling? Ideal Galentine's or Valentine's Day?
Ooh, interesting. So I think Galentine's Day, what's really fun is kind of like getting little gifts for each other, almost like a Secret Santa, but like your girlfriends, and like could be fun Valentine's related stuff, or like little candy baskets and movie and wine if you're legally allowed to drink wine. And then for dates, I'll be honest, I've never been a huge Valentine's Day date person, partially because I've regularly been away at races on Valentine's Day, but I'm actually a really big fan of celebrating Valentine's Day a day after or a day before when there's less people out, but you still get really dressed up. And for me, it's just about going to dinner, getting dressed up, getting fancy with your boo, and like maybe some flowers, maybe, yeah, some eating, but low key. I'm a more low key Valentine's Day. But in elementary school, I always wore red or pink on Valentine's Day. Like I had this one pair of red pants that I wore 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade. Amazing.
Style icon. That's very smart advice, actually. Like go the day before, the day after. Like the reservations won't be booked up.
Oh yeah, totally. And usually it's a little cheaper if they only have a Valentine's Day menu. Yeah. I'm again pragmatic. I don't like to have to struggle too much to make it happen.
Makes sense. All right, last rapid fire question. Do you prefer to stay in or go out?
Stay in, especially at this point in my life. Like, you know, my boyfriend and I now are like every weekend it's like, oh, we should go out. And then the weekend you guys here, it's like, you know what, but the couch is so great. Cooking is so fantastic. He's a great cook, so I wash the dishes. And
oh wow,
I am a homebody. It's either like on the road racing, speaking, whatever, or at home.
I agree. The couch is very inviting, as well as the bed. Like my best friends.
Yeah, right. And sweatpants and slippers, and when you get tired, you just go to bed.
Yeah, and no one has to like perceive you as well. Like you can just be in your safe little bubble.
Exactly. And we love a safe little bubble.
All right. Well, I guess to wrap this recording up, thank you viewers for listening. Again, shout out to Innoverge and all our resources and opportunities, innoverge.org for all of those. And then shout out to Julia for speaking with us. Julia, where can we find you online?
Of course, Instagram, Twitter, I'm at Julia Landauer. I love hearing from you. If you have follow-up questions, I read my DMs. I love it. Facebook, and yeah, that's primarily where I am. So I hope it was helpful. And again, always feel free to reach out.
Yes, thank you so much, Julia. This was really inspiring for me to listen to, and I know that a lot of people will be able to get a lot out of this.
I'm so glad. Thank you for having me.
Bye for now.